welcome back to my channel. This is Sandy. I have created some simple manly cards using the Authentic Manly paper collection. I made 3 slimline cards using the 12 by 12 scraps from the collection, and then I made 12 A2 size cards using the 6 by 6 paper pad, the Manly by Authentic for Country Craft Creations. I'll also show you how to make a belly band out of your piece of scrap from your 12 by 12 paper, and to hold them all together. So you see that we have several different styles. We have 4 different styles. I made 3 of each. So stay tuned for the tutorial. To create the A2 cards, we're going to use a 6 by 6 paper pad from Authentic called Manly. And you're going to need your scoreboard, which is under my mat, a scoring tool, and a bone folder. You're also going to want your adhesive. I'm going to use the art glitter glue. And then you'll need a trimmer, and I like to use my little personal trimmer, Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer. Now, I won't be showing you trimming all the pieces, but this is what I'll be using for mine. So I am using an 8.5 by 11 craft cardstock for my card bases, and I've pre-cut mine. So these are all cut to 4 1/4 inches by 11, so you don't have to cut the 11-inch side. And I will score them in half and fold over to create my A2 size card. So a finished A2 card size base is 4 1/4 inches by 5.5 inches. So this is cut to 11 by 4 1/4. And I cut out 12 pieces because I want to make 12 cards. In this video, I'm also going to make 3 slimline cards, and I'm also making those out of the 8.5 by 11 cardstock. And for slimlines, you need to cut these to 7 inches on the 11-inch side and then leave the 8.5 inch. So this is what we have for slimline, and then we'll score that in half so that we have a finished card of 3.5 by 8.5. I'm also going to use black Memento ink to stamp some of the sentiments that I'll be using on my cards, my platform, stamping platform, which is a Tim Holtz, and then I will also use an assortment of acrylic stamps that I have in my collection. I may or may not use some of these, but I pulled them all out because I like the different sentiments on them. These are really cute. I'm not going to use the images, of course, but I am using possibly some of the sentiments that it says on this. I'll decide as I make the cards. For sure, I'll be using some on this one that I got from Country Craft Creations. One other tool I like to use is card sketches, and I like Operation Write Homes that you can pull up online on your phone. And I just go through, I'm showing one here that I probably will use. So you just pull up your different ones. They have the measurements already cut. So that's a really great tool to use in creating some quick and easy, simple cards. So the next thing we're going to do first is make our card bases. So I've taken the 8.5 by 11 paper and I've cut it on my big trimmer. You want to cut these down the 8.5 by 11 paper. You want to cut the 8.5 sides in half at 4 1/4 and leave the 11-inch length intact, and then you score the 11-inch side, put that in at the top, and score in half at 5.5. This will give you a card base that opens from the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do all 12 of these real quick. Make sure you take your bone folder and burnish the fold of each card. I've already done all of mine except this one. You want to make sure you have a nice, crisp, folded over card. So now we're ready to select a card sketch and work on our first 3 cards. Now I apologize, I cannot give you the number of this card sketch, but I will give you the measurements. I had recorded this and my video camera for some reason didn't get the sound, so I gave the sketch number in the video, but I can't see it and I didn't write it down. So I do apologize for that. So this particular one, I added onto it. I'm going to add a background that is 4 1/8 wide by 5 3/8 tall. And then you have two mats. You have one mat that is 2.5 wide by 4.5 wide that I'm going to cut out of pattern paper, and then one mat that's 2 inches wide by 4 inches tall. I'm going to cut that out of craft. And then the three small strips are 3.5 wide by 3/4 tall out of the pattern paper. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up and show you the assembly. It's just really easy. We're going to lay it all down, and then we'll add a sentiment to the craft mat that goes on the top. I'm going to put probably 3 different sentiments on there that say celebrate such a good day and remember. Now I'm ready to stamp the sentiments on the mat that I'm going to add onto the card. So I have my platform, my stamping platform, made sure that I had the acrylic lettering facing up, so I'm using the correct side. And I'm taking the little craft mat, the one that measures 2 inches wide by 4 inches tall, and I place it in there, and I'm going to place all the sentiments where I want them on this mat. So the center one is such a good day, and then I have one that says remember. Put that on the bottom. Just making sure that they are centered and straight. And then the celebrate's going to go here at the top. Once you have them placed where you want them, then you can go ahead and close your lid of the stamping platform and press down and make sure they grab, and then make sure your mat stays straight. So this way all three will be, for all 3 cards will be stamped the same. So I'm inking it up with my black Memento ink and pressing it down. And if it doesn't give me a good impression the first time, I could just re-ink, which I'm doing now, re-ink and stamp again, and it will all stamp in the same place. So if you've ever had problems stamping for your cards, getting you a platform to do it with is a must. They come in different sizes, different companies. I'm not sure if Tim Holtz still has one or not. This is my favorite one. But anyway, this is a tool that's very handy if you make a lot of cards and you like to do stamping. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other 2, and they will turn out the same. And the camera shakes because I'm pressing down onto the stamps with my ink. So I apologize for that. My camera is mounted to my craft table, so sometimes things like that will make it move. So I hope I'm not making you too terribly dizzy with that. Now, if you have time and you want to do embossing of your sentiments, that really adds to a card. I'm not doing it for these. I'm going to keep them really simple and quick, but I do like embossing. It's just that you have to get all the different supplies out for embossing. And always make sure you put your paper piece that you're stamping on back in the same location. I like to use the corner, that way I know, and everything just lines up correctly. And don't worry about the ink that's on the lid you see there on the side. It is not going to touch down and get on your card base or your mat. So that one inked up with just one pass. I'm going to close this up, and then I will clean off my stamp and my platform lid and set those aside and go ahead and start assembling the card. So for this first set of 3 cards, I am matting the solid piece, which is the navy print from the collection, onto the card. And then I'm matting the craft with the sentiments down onto the other pattern piece. And then I'm adding these 3 strips and spacing them out and then attach the other one on top. So as you can see, it's really quick and easy. I will be adding the glitter drops later after all the cards are finished so that they can all sit out and dry. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of these 3 the same. And I pretty much try to keep the positioning of the papers in the same location, but if they're slightly off, it doesn't matter because they're all going to go to different recipients. So no one's going to know that it's not exactly a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch or whatever spacing between these strips of paper, and they're not in the same place. So there's all 3 cards. So for my next set of 3 cards, I picked out another Operation Right Home sketch here. And I'm going to I'm not going to put a background down. I'm just going to cut the square here. And that square is going to be 2.5 wide by 3.5. I'm doing it in a plaid. And then the little strip is going to be 3/4 wide by 3.5. And I'm doing that in the numbers print. And then I'm going to use the little stripe. And that one's going to be 1 3/4 wide by 1 1/4 tall. And then I cut apart images. I selected 3 different ones, and those measures 1.5 wide by 1 7/8 tall. So I'm going to go ahead and start gluing these down. And you'll notice that the image is what I'm using instead of the heart that you saw on the sketch. The heart just means that's where you want an element. So it could be a sticker, a die cut, or whatever you choose, a flower or whatever for your particular card that you're making on this sketch. For this next set of cards that I just assembled, I'm going to stamp the sentiment onto the actual card base, which is easy to do if you're using a stamping platform. So you can see I have put the card inside and use the magnets to hold it down, and I'm using a happy birthday stamp to stamp directly onto that craft cardstock right there on the bottom. And I'm going to do the same for all 3. And it inked up pretty good and stamped right away, so I didn't have any problems with that. But if you have a stamp platform like this and you need to add more ink and stamp a second time, as long as everything is held in place with the magnet and put in the same place, as you see, I put the card down into the corner so to make sure that it all stays in the same place. And you just stamp it down. So that one turned out pretty good too, so I'm only having to stamp it once. And then this is the third one. And as you can see, each card is a little different because it has a different little cut apart. I have the one that says keeping it real with the fisherman, and the one that has the track runners for sport. And then this one here, it says you're the king of my heart. And for these 3 cards, I'm going to go ahead and take some red button string. This red, I think, matches it up pretty good, the colors that are in that plaid. And I'm just going to take probably a 18-inch piece of string here, and I'm going to pull it into the top and wrap it around about 2 or 3 times and then tie it just in a knot on the very front. So I'm going to do this on all 3 cards. So those are all 3 done, and we're ready to move on to the next set of cards. So we have 6 done. We're halfway there with the A2 cards. So I selected another Operation Ride Home sketch. For this one, I am going to use a background here. So I did cut that to 4 1/8 wide by 5 3/8. And I think I'm going to use this marbly looking side. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue this down right quick. I'm going to make one and then I'll do the others in the speeded up version. So this mat goes down first onto the card base. And I always like to burnish them down when I'm using glue to make sure that they stick down good. Then the next piece, pattern piece, that goes on the left here, measures 2 inches wide by 5 inches tall. And I'm using the little hexagon, different colors. I'm just going to attach it right here. It kind of lines up all the way to the top and about 1/4 of an inch from the left. And then I cut a craft mat for these images. I cut from the 6x6 pads, this little collage looking images. This one in the pattern paper measures 2 1/2 wide by 3 5/8, and then I'm going to mat it down onto craft cardstock. I just mat them down where I want them and then cut them out with my scissors. But if you want the measurements for that craft mat, it's about 2 5/8 wide by 3 3/4 tall. If you like to cut them out before you add the pattern paper. So see, I'm just attaching it down, and then I take my scissors and cut this equal amount of border around the 2 sides that need trimmed. Take a little off on this other side, just a tiny bit, to even it all up. And that's just going to glue down right there on top of the other layer. And then I'm going to add a banner. This is not in the sketch. I want a banner out of pattern paper that I will add a craft banner onto the top of it with the sentiment. So I have already pre-cut these. The pattern ones are 2 5/8 wide by 1 5/8 tall, and then I cut the notch for the excuse me, the banner piece, and then the craft one is cut 2 1/2 wide by 1 1/2 tall. So they're just going to layer like that. And I'm going to look at the images and put the banner, I'm going to put 2 towards the top and 1 toward the bottom. It has to do with the images on that collage paper that I don't want to cover up. So they're going to look a little bit different. And I'm just double checking the measurements that I gave you. And here you cut the notch out. So I'm going to glue this one here at the bottom because it's not going to cover up the image. You can see the canoe in the car and the man on the Bronco. So I'm going to glue this to the left side all the way pretty much almost to the edge of the pattern paper on the left. And I'm using this gray plaid. And then I glue the craft banner over on top of that. But first, let me see. I think it's easier to stamp. I'm going to stamp the sentiments on all the craft pieces first before actually gluing those down. So put that in my platform and grab the sentiment. Okay, my lid was not wanting to close. Sometimes you have to pull it up and let it go back down. So I'm going to move the magnet slightly, and this says missing you. So I'm going to put that down and stamp the same way that I have before. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up so you don't have to watch me stamping all 3. Okay, so I have the sentiment stamped on the craft colored banners, and I'm just going to glue these down on top. I'm doing this first card, and then the other two cards will be assembled the same, except that the banners will be put to the top on the left side. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up the camera again while I assemble the other two cards. For the last three cards, I'm going to use the same sketch as I did on the last set. I'm going to cut out of the plaid one piece for each card that is 2 inches wide by 5 inches tall. I'm not putting a background on the card base. I'm just leaving it craft. So I'm gluing this one straight down, lined up at the top about a 1/4 inch from the left side. And then I cut another piece of the pattern paper. These are from the 6x6 pad. This one is 2.5 wide by 3.5 tall. It's a little different size because I'm not matting it to a craft mat. I'm putting it straight down. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that down. And then on this one, I'm going to add an extra little element here that is not on the sketch. So I am going to cut apart some little cut aparts from the 6x6 paper and mat them to craft. So I'm going to go ahead and attach all these layers down, and then I will do the little cut aparts next. So I selected 3 different images from the cut aparts on the 6x6 paper pad. I selected the cowboy on the Bronco, the work hard, stay humble, and then the gentleman with the top hat. And those are cut down to, let's see what they measure, 1.5 wide by 2 inches tall. And then the craft around them is going to be 2 1/8 tall by 1 5/8 wide. So go ahead and cut those out and go ahead and get them matted to the craft cardstock. I've selected the images and laid them all out. And then now I'm going to take and glue them to craft cardstock. Now you can cut your craft down to the sizes that I just gave you, or you can just glue them straight down onto some craft and cut around them with your scissors, which is what I like to do when I'm making cards. It just seems faster to me. If you're using the big, large scissors like these Tim Holtz ones, you can cut a really straight cut on these smaller pieces like that. And then just, adjust it if you need to, maybe trim down on the other sides as well. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all these and glue them down. And then our cards will be basically done, except I'm going to, like I said, add some Nouveau glitter drops to kind of dress them up. The last 3 cards are finished. They're assembled. So now I'm going to take some Nouveau glitter drops in the golden sunset color, because I think it's kind of a brown sparkly color that has glitter in it that will look good with these colors of this paper collection. And I am just putting 3 dots across the top, spacing them out up here in this craft part on the right. And it's really important that you set these all aside and let them dry really well, like let them dry overnight or for a whole day before you stack them together, because you don't want your glitter drops to stick together. So I've done it on these 3 cards and then decided that the other cards needed them as well. I like how that looks. It looks really good on them. So set them aside, and then I will grab the other cards and go ahead and put dots on them too. Next, to create a belly band, after all my cards have dried, I've taken scrap of paper left over from cutting the card bases, and it measures about 11 inches by 1.5 tall of the cardstock. And then pattern paper, I cut it down to about 1 3/8 inches tall, and it's about 10 7/8 inches wide or so. So this is what's going to make a belly band. So I'm going to take this pattern paper, and I have first punched 3 holes on one end. Pay attention to the direction. So I went on the right end, looking at the paper the way it needs to go on the band. And I'm adding 3 large brads through the pattern paper. And so I wanted to make it look kind of like a belt. So I punched those holes before gluing anything down. And then this is going to glue down onto the cardstock, so you won't see the backs of the brads. So now take your glue or score tape, whichever you want to use. Score tape might be quicker so that you don't have to wait for it to dry completely before bending it or folding it around your cards, but I'm going to use glue on mine and just add a good amount around those brads and then down both sides and across the end here, and get a good coverage of glue if you're using glue for this pattern piece of paper that goes down on the cardstock for the belly band. And I'm going to place this down about 1/8 of an inch from the end of the cardstock, so it has an 1/8 of an inch border around it, and burnish that down. In the video, it's hard to see really the brads, but they do look really nice on this strip when it's in person. So I'm going to burnish that down, and then I'm going to let it dry. You want to let it dry for quite a bit so that it doesn't do any buckling if you're using glue. Once it dries, then go ahead and put a line of glue on the end opposite from where the brads are. And I'm just going to overlap about 1/4 of an inch, because I did allow a little extra room for these cards. You might want to place it around your cards before actually gluing it to see if you need to make it a little tighter or maybe a little looser. You could probably go down to 1/8 of an inch overlap if you wanted to. So I'm going to let that dry, and now I have taken it and shaped it. You see on the sides, it's kind of got squared it on the side by placing it over my cards and then just pressing and bending and getting that shape. I wanted it to be a little loose because I want to add some envelopes in there with the cards. So there's a set of 12 A2 cards, set of 12 A2 cards with a belly band to hold them all. So it's a nice set. You could give this as a gift or just to keep it in your drawer so that you have cards ready to send. So next we're going to make 3 slimline cards. Those are the latest trend, and I think you'll enjoy making slimline cards. We're going to make 3 slimline, and out of the craft cardstock for the bases, we will cut 7 inches by 8.5. So I have these already cut, 8.5 long by 7 inches wide. So you don't have to cut your 8.5 length if you're using the 8.5 by 11 cardstock. You just trim down the 11-inch side to 7 inches. And then in your trimmer, you're going to score these. You're going to put the 7-inch side up at the top, and you're going to score in half, and that would be score at the 3.5 inch mark. So I've already done 1, so I'm scoring 2 more. The reason I'm only doing 3 is because I'm limited on this scraps that I have that are 12 by 12. You do want to use 12 by 12 paper because 6 by 6 won't work on this unless you're piecing it. So fold it in half, each card base piece, fold in half and burnish really well so that it closes up nice and crisp, has a crisp fold there to keep them closed. Now for my cards, Slimline cards, I'm going to put a mat on the front here, and I'm going to make mine go up and down. You could change and do it the other direction if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. And again, these will fit in a number 10 envelope for mailing. But I have cut out my papers already. And I'm going to use the same on all 3 cards. But first I'm going to take what I cut out for the first card. You'll see here the brown. For each card I cut a piece of brown matting, and that is 3 3/8 wide by 8 3/8 tall, so they're all the same. 3 3/8 wide by, I'm just double checking, by 8 3/8 tall. So this will fit. This is the first mat that's going to fit on the card. And then from each one, from a scrap of the collage paper in the 12 by 12, I cut a pattern mat that is 3 1/4 wide by 8 1/4 tall. And I like this image here with the airplane and the cars, but I want to stamp my sentiment right directly onto the patterned paper, and it's really easy to do. So I'm putting it here in my platform. And I am going to use a thank you stamp, a really large one that I have in my stash. So this is going to go at an angle, making sure which way it fits the best without going over any of the image. So you want to stamp it in an area that's kind of light in color so that it will show up. So that's going to work there. And again, I'm using the Memento black ink. It gives it a really nice dark black color. And this would look great embossed as well. Now I stamped it down and it's not taking the ink, and gotta take a few seconds to figure this out. Okay, and it is because the magnet is over the ridge of where the lid goes. So once I move the magnet down, then it's going to stamp. Okay, there you go. Thank you. That looks really good. I'm going to add just a little bit more ink. I want it a little bit darker. Okay, that looks good. So now we'll move the magnets off and set this aside and go ahead and clean this off because I will need to use it one more time for a different sentiment. So I've taken the brown cardstock and I'm going to glue that over the edge. I got a little bit of my baby wipe on the side there, but it's going to dry and also be covered up with the pattern paper. So you see that on the left there. So go ahead and take my glue and I'll turn it over so maybe it's on the back side anyway, because I want the texture to the front. This is one of the My Colors from Country Craft Creations, and you can get them in sorted colors. This is a really pretty brown, and it does have a little texture on one side. So I'm going to turn that over and touch it down. And then next I'm going to take the piece of paper, a pattern paper that I just stamped thank you on. And I'm going to glue that down. So these are cut. The patterned papers, I think I gave you already, is cut down to 3 1/4 wide by 8 1/4 tall, so that you just have a very slight brown border around them. So using the art glitter glue, you can use tape runner on cards, works just as well. So I'm going to burnish that down. I like to use this spatula type. This is a Cricut spatula to burnish it down and spread that glue out so you don't have any warping. Next, I took 3 little stickers from the sticker sheet that comes with the collection, and I matted them, attached them down to some of the brown cardstock, the My Colors cardstock, and fussy cut around them so that they have a narrow brown border around them, and I'm just going to glue these down, and they say charming, humble, and gentleman. So this is going to be all the decorating I'm going to do on this card, keeping it really clean and simple. Not a lot of frou-frou for guys. Just make it more appropriate for them. I know we all love to add flowers and ribbons and bows and buttons and things like that, but these cards I'm keeping really simple, more for the masculine factor, and also to keeping them flat so they're easy to mail. So there's that card all finished. For the next card, we'll use the same My Colors Brown cardstock for the first mat. And again, that is cut to 3 3/8 wide by 8 3/8 tall. And I'm just going to glue it to the front. And then I also cut a patterned mat. Again, it's the same, and it's out of the collage piece, out of the 12 by 12, and it's 3 1/4 wide by 8 1/4 tall. So it's going to glue down just right here. And this is the piece that has the scenes for fishing. And as I said, 3 1/4 wide by 8 1/4 tall. So I'm going to glue that right there. And this one's going to be a little bit different. It's going to have a banner for the sentiment and nothing else on the card. On all three of these cards, I will be adding the Nouveau glitter drops after the cards are finished to kind of just finish them off like I did the A2 cards. So I'm going to burnish this down, make sure it's all smoothed out. And then I'm going to go ahead, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and on the third card, go ahead and mat the brown down. It is the same size again, 3 3/8 wide by 8 3/8 tall. And I'm just burnishing it to make sure it lays flat. And then I've cut a piece of patterned paper that again is 3 1/4 wide by 8 1/4 tall. I'll glue that down. And then on top of that, I cut from one of the cut aparts. It's a nice long cut apart. It says Pony Express. And I cut it down to about 2 5/8 wide by about 7 5/8 tall. So that's going to glue down right on top of this card on the front. And then I have stickers that I have selected that I'm going to use on the front of this. And then I'll end up stamping another sentiment onto one of the stickers after it's been attached to the card. So let's go ahead and put this down first and burnish it out. And then I have a sticker here that's a circle. It's a cowboy on a horse. So peel the backing off. And I'm going to add some glue. Even though it is a sticker, I want to make sure it doesn't peel up. I'm going to put that down towards the bottom, just above the Wells Fargo. And the other stickers are 3 separate blocks. It says My Guy. My is in the real small letters above the G. So I'm going to put the U down first, kind of in the center, right above the circle. And then put the other letters on each side of that. Kind of staggered. Putting the G just up a little bit. And then the Y. Okay, so all I need to do now is stamp the cinnamon on this. And I'm going to put it here on the side at an angle. So I'm just looking to see where I might want to put it, and then I'm going to go ahead and get my stamping platform and get ready to stamp this. So I'm going to go ahead and put the card in, line it up on the left and the bottom. Use the magnets to hold it in place, and then I'm going to lay that stamp where I think it should go. See, it's just slightly at an angle, and then grab it with the lid, and we'll add the Memento black ink. It's a pretty good stamped image, but I want it a little darker. And since the L comes off of the actual circle of the sticker, I'll make sure that it gets stamped in there good. Okay, so that looks good, and that card's finished except for the glitter dots that I'll add later. And now I'm going to go ahead and stamp that sentiment for the happy birthday sentiment for the fishing card to go on the banner, to make a banner for that. So I have a piece of cardstock here in the craft, and it measures about 3 1/8 wide by 1 1/2 tall. So I'm going to stamp this happy birthday sentiment more to the left so that I can cut the ends of the banner. Go ahead and stamp that, and then the pattern paper that goes behind this craft banner, or actually I'm going to use brown. Sorry, I'm going to use the brown, my colors. And I'm going to cut it 3 3/8 wide by 1 5/8 tall. So I'm going to do one more stamping on this to make sure it's good and dark. And that's the last image that I'm going to stamp for this tutorial. Okay, to make the banner, I'm just laying it down. I think I'm going to put it here at the top. And I'm going to trim down on the left end so that it's closer to the cinnamon and makes it a little shorter so it'll actually fit here on the card. And then I'm taking my small scissors. I'm going to cut a little notch, little line in the center up to where I want the notch to be, and then I'm just going to angle cut from the tip of the piece to the center, so I have a V here cut out. So that's the banner. And then again, out of the pattern paper, or sorry, out of the brown, my colors, decided to use brown, I'm going to glue this down, and then I'll cut around that to give it a mat out of brown. So I'm going to glue the banner down onto the brown, and then just fussy cut around the banner shape. So I'm leaving about 1/8 of an inch from the end on the left, and then I'm going to trim all this out. And I like to use my big scissors on the straight side where it's a little longer cut, because I can cut it straighter than I can with the small ones. Okay, so that's going to go here, and I think I'll put it at a slight angle. I might like it better, so I'm going to put the glue on it. Just below where it says Million Thrills and above the fish in the image on the paper. Burnish that down. So I will be adding again the glitter drops, and I'm just trimming this in just a tiny bit where it sticks out just a little bit further than I wanted it to, because I want to make sure this goes in an envelope easily. So I'm going to trim that out. Again, I'm going to use the Nuvo drops in the the glitter drops in the Golden Sunset, and I just put 2 dots there on that banner for that card. And then for the cowboy one, I'm going to put glue dot, not a glue dot, I'm sorry, a glitter dot in each corner. My bottle is kind of sticking plugged up, so I'm going to put one in each corner of the 4 corners of the on the pattern paper, and then I will do the same on the thank you card. So here are all of the finished cards that I designed using Authentique's Manly 6x6 paper pad for the 12 A2 cards, and leftover scraps from the Manly 12x12 collection for the Slimline cards. I made 3 of those, and for the belly band that goes around the A2 cards. I want to thank you so much for watching and invite you to, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and click on the bell so you know when my next project is ready. And also be sure and check out Country Craft Creations online store for your crafting supplies for your projects. Get your cardstock, chipboard, pattern paper collections, especially Authentiques and other name brand collections of the current ones that are available. Also, you might want to check for your adhesives such as art glitter glue and score tape and other embellishments. So again, thanks so much. Bye-bye.